During the years of 2008 and 2009, a lady one day phoned me and told me that Yeshua had revealed to her who the Antichrist would be. This lady I had known for a long time, she being very prophetic and having heard many things from the Lord, had actually been one day she was watching the television, and when this man came on the television, she looked into his eyes, and as soon as she saw his eyes, she just knew that he would be the Antichrist. So she phoned me and she said that this man is going to be the Antichrist. I did not know who this man was when she told me about him, and I had no background on him. And I was not immediately convinced, but I decided to do some research on this man. All I could do was to compare what Yeshua had shown us over the last 10 years with the profile of this man. And all that he had granted us and shown us through signs in the heavens, and I had to compare that with prophecy. This man had to fulfill all that Yeshua had revealed to us about him. So I started to do some research on his life and on his ancestry. I started looking at his personality and his character, whether he could become the Antichrist. Does he have that kind of authority that he could rise to power and become a world leader? And I started looking at his travel plans and his possible plans of espionage which he could do behind the scenes, and compared it to the plans that Yeshua had shown us. Just as Yeshua had revealed to us, as soon as the bison and the crocodile committed adultery, and that then the Antichrist will be given birth to, as soon as the country of Libya were attacked, I knew that this man that this lady told us about actually was the Antichrist, and all that Yeshua had revealed to us was true. And I give glory and honor to him alone, who knows the hearts of men, who knows the future. And I knew that this very man was going to become the man of sin, or the lawless one, the Antichrist. This person this lady had told me about perfectly fitted the profile and the prophecies that Yeshua had revealed to us. This man was Nicholas Sarkozy. Nicholas Sarkozy, born Nicholas Paul Stefani Sarkozy Danagi Boxa on January 28, 1955, and is the 23rd and current President of the French Republic and ex officio co-president of Andorra. He assumed the office on the 16th of May 2007. Official transfer of power took place on the 16th of May at the Elche Palace, where Nicolas Sarkozy was given the nuclear codes of the French nuclear arsenal and presented with a Grand Master's collar, symbol of his new function of Grand Master of the Legion of Honor. According to Daniel 11:21, it was said to Daniel that in his place of office shall arise a contemptuous and a contemptible person, to whom royal majesty and honor of the kingdom have not been given. But he shall come in without warning in a time of security, and shall obtain the kingdom by flatteries, intrigues, and cunning hypocritical conduct. We see here that the French president on the 16th of May, which is the very day that the prophecy that Yeshua had revealed to me of the morning star and the crescent moon fulfilling on its first level on the 16th of May, fulfilled. On that very day, he was given the power to become the French president, given the nuclear codes, as well as being granted what they call a Grand Master Scholar, giving him the new function of Grand Master. In order to become a Grand Master, you must be part of an organization of the fertility rite called Freemasonry, which have levels, and there are different levels. In order to become a Grand Master, you must be a Freemason. We see that the president is part of a secret society and also have been put in place by those who are in power in the highest orders, which is the Roman Catholic Church, which we will see also later. We see in Daniel 11:31 that Scripture says in verse 2, "Before him the overwhelming forces of invading armies shall be broken and utterly swept away." Yes, a prince of the covenant, with those who are at peace with him, also shall be broken and swept away. Having received the nuclear powers and the nuclear codes, not only of the French arsenal, but at that time when he arrives into the position, he will have the entire nuclear arsenal of the world at his hand. And before him, the overwhelming forces of invading armies will be broken and utterly swept away. It says that he will also break the prince of the covenant, and he will also be swept away. Here is the best proof that the Longhorn, the prince of the covenant, the one who made the 7-year agreement, is not the Antichrist. Then in verse 31 it says, "Armed forces of his shall appear in the Holy Land, and they shall pollute the sanctuary, the spiritual stronghold, and shall take away the continual burnt offering, and they shall set up in the sanctuary the abomination that astonishes and makes desolate. And such as violate the covenant he shall pervert and seduce with flatteries." Here we see that behind the scenes he will set up the situation in such a way as to make ready and set up the abomination that astonishes. They will come into Israel, and he will go and sit and take the position, making himself as God. And this will cause the armed forces to become angry, and he will sweep them away, making them desolate. Sarkozy is a Frenchman of mixed national and ethnic ancestry. He is the son of Paul Istvan Erno Sarkozy de Nagy Boksa, a Hungarian aristocrat, and André Jean or Dudu Mala, who is a French Catholic and Ottoman Shvirdik Jew from Jewish descent, and they were married on the 8th of February 1950 and divorced in 1959, 9 years later. We see that the French president rose up and were brought up in a broken family, as it often is, that those who are in a broken family also have broken lives. And because of their broken lives, they often grow up in a unbalanced society, which is where the survival of the strongest. We see that the French president was also raised up under a Catholic mother with Jewish background. During Sarkozy's childhood, his father refused to give his wife's family any financial help, even though he had founded his own advertising agency and had become wealthy. According to Sarkozy, his staunchly Gaelic father was more of an influence on him than his own father, whom he rarely saw. We see that Sarkozy was abandoned in his life, and because of abandonment, he often had to face rejection and shame in his life. Sarkozy was raised Catholic. In Daniel 11:37, the prophecy says, He shall not regard the gods of his fathers, or him to whom women desire to give birth, that is the Messiah, or any other god, for he shall magnify himself above all. But in their place he shall honor the God of fortresses, a God whom his fathers knew not, shall he honor with gold and silver, with precious stones, and with pleasant and expensive things. We see that he will not worship Yeshua. He will not accept the God of his forefathers, which his mother was from Jewish descent, but he will worship another God. He will actually magnify himself above all other gods. When Satan come down, entering into a man who is ready, the arrogance and the contemptuous attitude of a contemptible person will give him that attitude to magnify himself above all other gods. And he shall then give honor to a God of fortresses, which is a God of war. Sarkozy said that being abandoned by his father shaped him who he is today. What made me who I am now is the sum of all the humiliations suffered during childhood, he said later. Sarkozy is recognized by both left and right as a skilled politician and a striking orator. Since November 2004, Sarkozy has been president of the Union for a Popular Movement, or the UMP, France's major right-wing political party, and he was Minister of the Interior in the government of Dominique de Villepin, with the honorific title of a Minister of State. His ministerial responsibilities included law enforcement and working to coordinate relationships between the national and the local governments, as well as he has been Minister of Worship. In his role, he created the CFCM, or the French Council of Muslim Faith. Previously, he was a deputy of the French National Assembly, and he previously also held several ministerial posts, including the finance minister. Sarkozy was made Chevalier de la Légion d'Honneur, or Knight of the Legion of Honor, by President Chirac in February 2005. On the 6th of May 2007, Nicolas Sarkozy became the sixth person to be elected president of the Fifth Republic, which was established in 1958, and the 23rd president in French history. He is also the first president to have been born after World War II. On 8th of June 2007, during the 33rd G8 summit in Heiligdam, he pushed forward the socialist Dominic Strauss-Kahn as a European nominee to the International Monetary Fund. Sarkozy's government issued a decree on the 7th of August 2007 to generalize a voluntarily biometric profiling program of travelers in airports. The program, called Parafes, was to use fingerprints. The new database would be interconnected with the Schengen Information System, or the SIS, as well as with an international database of wanted persons, or the FPR. We see here how he had pushed forward a decree so that all airports would have to have a biometric profiling program system in order to read all travelers coming through his airports And this specific system was linked and interconnected with other databases in order to compare them with wanted persons. We see in Revelation 13, verse 16, that the second beast will rise up out of the land, will cause the whole earth to worship the first beast, who is the Antichrist, or will be led by the Antichrist. It says, he also compels all alike, both small and great, both rich and the poor, both free and slave, to be marked with an inscription and a stamp on their right hand and on their foreheads, so that no one will have the power to buy or sell unless he bears the stamp, the mark, or the inscription, that is the name of the beast, or the number of his name. This so-called voluntary biometric profiling system is nothing but a forerunner of this inscription that will be given. Forced men will have to take this inscription either on their foreheads or on their right hand, which will be like a barcode system in order to track you both, to see where on the earth you live, to see what is your date of birth, and to give you a very specific number. Each person on the whole earth will be identified in this way. We already see here the mindset given to him by the Illuminati in order to institute the system in his own country. On the 21st of July 2008, French Parliament passed a constitutional reform in which they would introduce a 2-term limit for the presidency and end the president's right of collective pardon. They would allow the president to address Parliament in session and Parliament and to set its own agenda. They would give Parliament a veto over some presidential appointments, while ending government control over Parliament's committee system. We see here that he instituted and brought in reforms that gave the president, in a way, looking like he's giving him less leeway, not allowing him to have more than a 2-term presidency, but in another way, giving the president the power to address Parliament and to veto certain presidential appointments. He has claimed that these reforms strengthen Parliament, while some in opposition, like the socialist lawmakers, have described this as a consolidation for a monarchy. We see already the mindset and the way of preparing his own Parliament, so that a institution would be set up and reforms would be brought about so that a monarchy could be brought about. As a result of a global financial crisis that came to the head in September 2008, Sarkozy has turned to what is called the state interventionism of his predecessors, declaring that in French is called laissez-faire, or capitalism is over, and denouncing the dictatorship of the market. Confronted with the suggestion that he had become a socialist, he responded, "Have I become a socialist? Perhaps." We see in Revelations 13 verse 6 that they will not only be given a mark, but they will control the entire world monetary system through this mark system, being a socialist system on which all people will be made equal. France also yielded a special international power when Sarkozy held the rotating EU presidency from July 2008 through to December 2008. We already see that he has full capability and has already addressed the European Union and been the leader of the European Union. Knowing them very well, they would be ready to follow suit when he rise to the occasion to become the new leader of the world. Sarkozy played some vital role in the Middle East affairs. On January the 5th, 2009, Sarkozy called for a ceasefire plan for the Gaza Strip conflict. The plan, which was jointly proposed by Sarkozy and the Egyptian President Hosni Mubarak, envisions the continuation of the delivery of aid to Gaza and talks with Israel on border security, which is a key issue for Israel, as it says Hamas smuggles its rockets into Gaza through the Egyptian border. We see that Sarkozy has been involved in Middle East affairs, and working with the president of Egypt, they are trying to bring about peace talks about the border security in Israel. We also see that he is providing Egypt with the ability. He says here that he called for a ceasefire plan for the Gaza Strip conflict. But we see that Hamas smuggles rockets into Gaza coming from the Egyptian border. So working with the Egyptian president, they are trying to prevent these rockets from being brought over the border into Gaza in order to attack Israel. We see that he is trying to make peace in Israel. The prophet Daniel prophesied and also said about this man that he said that, I consider the horns, and behold, there came up among them another horn, a little one, before which 3 of the first horns were plucked up by the roots. And behold, in this horn were eyes like the eyes of a man, and mouth speaking great things. We saw earlier in the seminar how Egypt and Libya had to be removed, being the 3 horns that first must be removed before the Antichrist can take his position. We also see how the prophecy says in Daniel 8 verse 9, out of littleness and small beginnings of one of them came a horn whose impious presumption and pride grew exceedingly great towards the south, which is where Egypt is, towards the east, and towards the ornament, the precious or the blessed land of Israel. We see how Israel will also become involved in this because of his pride and arrogance, wanting to broaden his borders towards the south, towards the east, and also Israel, being in his way, would have to be removed. Sarkozy takes care of his own personal image, sometimes to the point of censorship, such as happened in the Paris March affair, when he allegedly forced its director to resign following an article on his ex-wife and her affair. We see that he is very sensitive about what is said about him in the news, even to the point where he would make the director of a newspaper resign. Sarkozy is reported by Reuters to be very sensitive about his height, which is believed to be 5'5" or 5'6". In Daniel 7:8, as we've already seen, there would arise a little horn or a small horn. We see here a very interesting play of words that Yahweh is using, calling him a small horn. Not only is France a very small country, but President Sarkozy, is also very short in stature, being only 5'5". Sarkozy lost a suit against a manufacturer of so-called Sarkozy voodoo dolls, in which he claimed, this is the man who was the manufacturer, that he had a right to his own image. We see here that the the perspective that people have about him, especially this man who made voodoo dolls of him, actually give us an idea of what other people see in their own country about their president. The Marine accused him of changing opinion in an Airbus affair. This is also very important, which we will see later, how in the one moment he will be on this side of the pole and then switching over to the other side of the pole, here being accused of changing opinions. The French Communist Party magazine accused Sarkozy of being a populist. And we'll see just now what is a populist. In Daniel 8 verse 23, it says that in the latter end of their kingdom, when they have reached the fullness of their wickedness, taxing the limits of God's mercy, a king of fierce countenance, understanding dark trickery and craftiness, shall stand up. And his power shall be mighty, but not by his own power. He shall corrupt and destroy astonishingly, and shall prosper and do his own pleasure. And he shall corrupt and destroy the mighty men and the holy people. And through his policy he shall cause trickery to prosper in his hand. He will magnify himself in his heart and mind, and in their security he will corrupt and destroy many. We see that he will be a person that will, first of all, it says a king of fierce countenance will arise. We have seen earlier it means a hard face or a fierce face. And we see that the president has a very hard and a fierce face. He says his power shall be mighty, but not by his own power. He will corrupt and he will destroy astonishingly. He will use and understand dark trickery and craftiness. In a moment we will see what is a populist and how through great deceptiveness he will switch from the one end of the pole to the complete opposite of the other end of the pole. On the 14th of March 2008, he won an anonymous backing for his plan to forge a closer political ties with Europe's North African and Middle Eastern neighbors on the Mediterranean Sea. The agreement came at the end of the first day of a 2-day EU summit. Here we say that President Sarkozy, and which also was one of his announcements that he made even before he became president, and was the biggest reason why he became president, is because of what he had called the Mediterranean Union. At the EU summit, he said and spoke in such a way to saying that he wants to forge closer political ties with Europe's North African and Middle Eastern neighbors. But we see how right now both Libya and Egypt is overthrown, and Syria and Lebanon and Israel is next, in order to reach his goal or his policy. And it says, all who will not bow to his policy, through his policy he will cause trickery to prosper in his hand, and he will magnify himself in his heart, and in their security he will corrupt and destroy many. According to Wikipedia, he's also very sensitive about his height, which is also very significant and very important. We see that Yeshua had earlier said that this man would be compared to Napoleon Bonaparte. When we look at a news article in June 10, 2009, the article reads how Sarkozy stood up to Obama. We try to avoid poking fun at Nicolas Sarkozy for his short stature, but sometimes the French president sets himself up for a little mockery. Speaking from the same podium as Barack Obama, Sarkozy added about 6 inches to his 5'5" by standing on a little stool, and added to his custom crafted elevator shoes This took him up to the same altitude as the 6'2" US president. Sarkozy is naturally sensitive about his lack of height, and it may not be fair to focus on it. Napoleon Bonaparte measured 5'6" in his stockings, which was not small for the late 18th century, but here derogatively being called bony, was diminished by English propaganda, which depicted him as a power-mad midget. It's interesting to note that Bonaparte's nickname was the Little Corporal, which was an affectionate term coined by the soldiers under his early command. Stephen Glover, a serious journalist from venting on Sarkozy in the mid-market Daily Mail, said this about him: "This diminutive egomaniac is increasingly becoming an embarrassment to his countrymen and his laughingstock to the rest of Europe." We see this very derogative way in which this so-called serious journalist actually writes about him. Sarkozy is something of an exception among the recent French leaders. For 30 of the past 50 years, they have been quite tall. Charles de Gaulle stood 6 feet 4 inches tall, and Jacques Chirac is a 6 feet 2. Having said this, Sarkozy's petite tail is a talking point and a subject of mockery in France too. And if you look at a cartoon that was included also, which was in the newspaper, you can see how President Sarkozy is compared to a man that is very sensitive to his height. But in this picture, he has actually been added devil horns. Everyone from serious biographers like Catherine Ney to the man in the local bistrot will tell you that it's important to understand this psychology and that he has spent his life compensating. That's how the cliche goes. There has been an idiom or a pun that many have used, that most of those who are short, they said, great poison has come in small bottles. And many of those who are short or are smaller in stature have often overcompensated because of their height. We can see how Yeshua had not only revealed this to us, but also called him the little horn. He did not call him the long, the tall, or the fat horn, but the little horn or the short horn. Just as Napoleon Bonaparte was also short. And we'll see in the next teaching, when we look at the Lord's calendar, how awesomely time periods also connect Napoleon Bonaparte with the Antichrist, and thus with the now revealed French president who will fulfill that position.